I'm going to show you how to master Protection Warrior in Season 4 of Dragonflight for both Mythic Plus and Raiding. It's going to be especially digestible for beginners with no information overload. Starting off with the stat priority we're going to want to follow, eye level and strength is always going to reign king. If, however, you would like to delve a little bit more into the secondary stats, the general priority that I recommend is haste, critical strike, then versatility, and lastly, mastery. If you are more looking into these, the best way to really do it, because it's not one size fits all, I would always then say that you should simulate your character. If you don't know how to do that, join my Discord. I have a written guide in my WoW compendium ebook in there. For the talents, we're taking this one on the left for raiding and this one on the right for Mythic Plus and AoE. I'm not going to go through all of the individual talents in this video, but I will go through the important ones, and you can import both of these builds using the links in my description. Before we actually get into the core rotation and what talents exactly we're taking though, I want to show you through the really important spells that we have. Rallying Cry on the top is going to temporarily boost up some morale with you and your party, giving you all extra health. We've also got Thunderous Roar, dealing big damage and causing a bleed effect on our enemies. Shield Wall on the bottom left then, reducing all damage taken for 8 seconds, I think. Avatar, transforming into an avatar, dealing more damage. And Ravager, one of my favourite ones. We're going to throw our weapon at the target and it's going to spin out, chasing enemies and generating rage. Rage is our main resource that we're going to be generating and spending as a Protection Warrior. Looking at the utilities we have, we've actually got quite a few. We've got Battle Shout, increasing your party or raid's attack power by 5% over an hour. Hamstring, something we can use to maim and slow the target. Pummel is our interrupt or kick. Kick is just another word for our interrupt, where we can interrupt the spell casting of our enemy. Heroic Leap, jumping to a location and doing some damage once we land. And Impending Victory. This is going to do some damage to our enemy, but mainly it's actually going to restore 30% health. There are a few other cooldowns, etc., but I'm going to take you through those in the rotation. First thing we see when we come into the game is that my UI may be vastly different to yours. I'm using an add-on called Elf UI, and this is custom built by me regarding this one. And if you would like it, you can click in the link down below to join my Patreon, where you can get this UI, including spreadsheets that help you with WoW, a VIP channel in Discord where you can ask more questions and get more sort of priority support, and lots of things like that, as well, of course, supporting the channel, and it's very much appreciated. Another thing on my UI, which you can get in my description, is this here. It's a Weak Aura, which is an add-on if you don't know, and this specific one is by Luxfos. It just has all of your cooldowns and your rage and abilities in one easy-to-see line of sight in the middle of the screen. I find them very helpful. It will automatically take out abilities or add them in if you change your talents, etc. as well. So now that we've gone through all of that, let's actually go through how we're going to be using the rotation. You may first of all know, or not know, that we have stances as a warrior. We have battle stance down here, a balanced combat stance that increases the critical strike chance of your abilities and reduces the duration of movement impairing effects. Then we've got defensive stance, a defensive combat stance that reduces all damage you take by 20% and all damage you deal by 5%. The general consensus that I always recommend is that if you need to go into defensive stance, if you aren't really at risk of dying, etc., then you can stay in battle stance to do more damage. It may be that, halfway through you actually decide you just swap to one or the other, and this is also absolutely fine. Another few utilities we have is, of course, a taunt, where we're making the target attack us because we are the tank. We have literally taunts the target to attack you, but we've also got Channeling Shout, and that's on a 2-minute cooldown. Taunts all enemies within 10 yards to attack you for 6 seconds. This is really good if enemies are getting a bit out of control, for instance, in Mythic Plus or something like this. So when we go into battle, of course, check you're in the right combat stance, depending on what you prefer. And then we're going to use Ravager to initiate combat. So we can throw our weapon, remember, and you can see it's spiraling out, and that's going to be attacking enemies. And then what we can do is we can charge into battle with our charge attack. Charge an enemy, dealing physical damage, rooting it for 1 second. This is going to generate 20 rage. You can see here, this is our rage building up. We can then use our avatar cooldown. You can see we go into a big rock avatar. transforming into a Colossus for 20 seconds, causing you to deal 20% increased damage and removing all roots and snares, again generating 10 rage. Don't forget to taunt the target if you need to. And we can also, before we get there, use our shield block. So use these as you're going into battle. Shield block is going to raise your shield, blocking all melee attacks against you for 8 seconds. These blocks can be critical blocks, increases shield slam damage by 30% while active. Shield slam is this one over here, slamming the target with your shield causing damage. So remember that this is going to increase shield slam damage while active, and that is your shield block. Once we are then in melee range, we can use our demoralizing shout. It's on a 45-second cooldown, and this is basically going to reduce the damage that our enemy actually does to us by 20%, and this is also going to generate some rage. We've then got our thunderous roar, roaring explosively, dealing damage and causing a bleed to all enemies within 12 yards. Again, generating rage, and that's basically the priority list we're going to be using this when we're going into battle. So we're going to start off with our Ravager, charge in, activating our avatar and shield block, demoralizing shout, and then thunderous roar, and then we're going to do our shield charge. So we're going to do it in that order when we're going into battle. Shield charge, again on a 45-second cooldown, charging to an enemy with a shield, dealing damage to it, and physical damage to all enemies within 10 yards, and stuns the primary target. Again, that's going to generate rage as well. One talent that you should be aware of is Violent Outburst. Consuming 30 rage grants a stack of Seeing Red, which transforms at 8 stacks into Violent Outburst, causing an Shield Slam or Thunderclap to do 200% increased damage, generate more rage, and grant Ignore Pain. So when we consume rage, we're going to get those stacks, and then after they build up into a Violent Outburst, either our Shield Slam or Thunderclap is going to do a lot more damage, basically. Now, once we've used our cooldowns, etc., and initiated combat, Shield Slam is going to be the top priority ability anyway, slamming the target, causing damage. One thing to also note is because of this Impenetrable Wall talent, Shield Slam is going to generate more rage and reduce the remaining cooldown of Shield Wall. Shield Wall is this one here. We spoke about this in the defensive cooldown part of the video. Reduces all damage you take by 40% for 8 seconds. So we can see here, Shield Slam is on cooldown. We're then going to use Revenge, swing in a wide arc, dealing damage to all enemies in front of you, dealing reduced damage beyond 5 targets. Your successful dodges and parries have a chance to make your next Revenge, cost no rage. Something else that Revenge can do is with the strategic talent here, Thunderclap, Revenge, and Execute. Namely, we're talking about Revenge here. Remember, that's the one we've just discussed, Revenge. Revenge has a 30% chance to reset the remaining cooldown on Shield Slam. And again, this is our Shield Slam here. So it's on cooldown, but when we use Revenge, as you can see like that, ta-da, we actually have a chance at resetting the cooldown. And we can use it when it procs like this. You can also see on our Execute, our next spell, which attempts to finish off a foe, causing up to however much damage based on rage spent, only usable at enemies with less than 20% health. You can see actually sometimes that will proc as well, and that is due to the talent Sudden Death. Your attacks have a chance to make your next Execute cost no rage, be usable at any target regardless of health, and deal damage as if you spent 40 rage. So that's our Execute. Basically, it's like a finishing ability. And oh, there we go. Our attacks have actually made it so that we can use it on the target, no matter of health. It's free, and it's going to act as if we've spent the maximum rage on it. And then, of course, that has also activated our free Shield Slam, which we can use twice there. So we're going to use our Execute whenever we can at this point in the rotation, and we're also going to use it, of course, when the target does actually hit low health. Let's just recap on where we've got to so far. So before we go into combat, we're going to use our Ravager. We're then going to charge in, doing Avatar and Shield Block, keeping up Shield Block whenever possible, demoralizing Roar, or Shout, should I say, to actually reduce the damage the target's doing, using our Thunderous Roar to get that bleed up. We're going to use our Shield Charge, stunning them and doing damage, using our Shield Slam whenever we get a proc and on cooldown, using our Revenge as well to do damage, using Execute whenever we get free ones of those, and that's pretty much it for the main kind of rotational part. If you're in an AoE situation, you can use Thunderclap instead, so like in Mythic Plus, Thunderclap being the AoE one, Shield Slam being the single target option. Don't forget that Revenge is actually going to apply Deep Wounds, that's a bleed it's going to apply on there. And that's going to spend some rage as well. Execute, remember, we're going to get those procs with it. We can use those procs whenever we get them. And then lastly, we've got Ignore Pain. Fight through the pain, ignoring 50% of damage taken up to 208,000 total damage prevented. Now, we can use this as well to spend rage on. And we also have the talent here, Brutal Vitality. 10% of damage you deal adds to your active Ignore Pain. And then a few other spells we've got. Of course, the one I spoke about earlier is Battle Shout, increasing the attack power of our allies in the party and raid. We've also got Last Stand, which I don't believe I spoke about earlier, increases maximum health by 30% for 15 seconds and instantly healing you for that amount. And lastly, Shield Block. You're able to block spells as well for 30 seconds. That's on another 1.5 second cooldown. So just to reiterate on all of it then, go in, use your Ravager, use that on cooldown, charge into combat, going into Avatar and keeping up Shield Block, using a Demoralizing Shout, Thunderous Roar, and Shield Charge. We can use these all on cooldown. And then we're going to be using our Shield Slam whenever we can, our Revenge to get the AoE out, and also to fish for the Shield Block instant procs, and the same on Execute, using the free ones of that whenever we can, and using Ignore Pain to quite literally ignore pain. And that is pretty much how we're going to play Protection Warrior in Season 4 of Dragonflight for single target. And a lot of these abilities, as you've seen, can actually cleave and hit multiple targets. So in Mythic Plus, the rotation isn't really going to change at all, apart from using things like Thunderclap instead of Shield Slam when it is, on multiple targets. The actual talents, however, are going to change ever so slightly, where we're now getting Thunderlord, increasing the radius of our Demoralizing Shout, and each enemy hit by Thunderclap reduces the remaining cooldown on Demoralizing Shout by 1.5 seconds up to 4.5 seconds. So again, it's all changed over, but Thunderclap rather than Shield Slam. And then the other one we have on a 40-second cooldown, which you can use, is Shockwave, sending a wave of force in a frontal cone, causing damage and stunning all enemies within those 10 yards, which is basically another, again, cleave AoE ability that we can use on multiple enemies. And that's pretty much it, guys. That is Protection Warrior. It's a really, really fun spec that you can play as a tank. I would say it's definitely one of the more straightforward tanks. You've got your main cooldowns and then just a few other abilities that you're going to be generally using. Don't forget, of course, to stance dance when applicable, going from battle stance and defensive stance as and when you need to as well. And if you have any more questions, feel free to join the Discord, where we have a lot of very beginner-friendly players and a very beginner-friendly community on top of that are actually always there to help. And again, you can always join the Patreon if you need more assistance importing the UI and things like that, or you just wish to support the channel. You can click here as well, which has got all of the PvE guides in it, this playlist for Season 4. There are also going to be PvP and dungeon guides as well on the channel, no matter what spec you may be playing.